interview Mike Buchholz, I would like to know, for you that I think you are an expert on e-waste or recycling electronics or all those kind of materials. What are the causes of e-waste? What do you think is causing this?
Well, electronic waste comes from electronics that we use that we no longer want anymore. So, for a person or a company, that device is no longer wanted. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't work anymore. It could still work, but it's just unwanted. So, for example, there's two different types of forces that are pushing this equipment out. Sometimes, legitimately, something breaks. Okay? And so it's broken, it no longer functions, it's probably too expensive to replace. So it becomes an e-waste when it's no longer wanted in that perspective. The other is more of a planned obsolescence. And I think cell phones are a very good example of that. So a cell phone, the cell phone company is going to want you to buy another cell phone in 1 or probably 2 years, whenever your contract ends up. So the new cell phone has more features. It's nicer, it's newer, it's clean, and so you'll get the new cell phone, and now your old cell phone becomes obsolete. So maybe you keep it and put it in a drawer, or maybe you give it to a friend. But at some point, you're going to say, "I no longer want this," so it becomes sort of a waste. You don't want it; it still works, but you don't want that device anymore. So so it doesn't necessarily mean that it will get recycled, but that becomes sort of a waste product for you. And that's the same thing for corporations. So corporations have employees, and they want to have good working equipment for their employees, good laptops, good displays, good computers, good printers. And so every 2 or 3 or 4 years, they're going to give you a new system, and they're going to replace everything, typically inside a corporation. You can imagine just thousands of pieces of equipment that they're upgrading that oftentimes are still functional, but they're just unneeded by that corporation. It's not useful to that corporation anymore because they've upgraded. And so that's what we do, is we deal with that e-waste, and we try to reuse or recycle that e-waste when it comes out of corporations or households.
Now, what are the consequence of litter e-waste on the street? E-waste on the street.
That's a great question. So electronic waste is electronics are safe when you're using them, right? You're not worried that a computer is going to make you sick or your cell phone is going to make you sick. They're safe, right? So in their packaging. But there are hazardous materials that they use to manufacture those. And so what happens is that when the electronic waste is put into a landfill, or it's set outside and allows rainwater to come down onto it, the water begins to interact with the metals and other materials inside of the electronics and can form hazardous materials. Right? So there can be lead, there can be mercury inside of there. There can be cadmium. Batteries have lithium as well. There can be other dangerous substances inside of the cell phones or PCs, laptops, and whatnot. You don't want that. You don't want the rainwater sort of leaching into that and taking those materials and putting them into the groundwater or into the soil. Because those stay they stay resident in the environment. It's not that they just don't evaporate away after a day. They stay there and they contaminate that soil. So it's unhealthy for the environment for electronics to be buried in it because, again, that water interacts with the electronics.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. That is what I read through many articles before I start this topic when I started writing about it, so I know like, but I just wanted to know your perspective for this.
Yeah, and then other people with used electronics, they will try to. One of the reasons we don't export electronic waste um, is that there are. I mean, the electronic waste has some valuable materials from a metals perspective. So there's some precious metal content in the boards. So people will try to use acid baths, or they'll cyanide baths, or other methods to try and extract the precious metals. They'll try to extract chips off of the circuit boards as well. So they'll put a circuit board under heat, and it makes the components. It heats up the solder on the components and allows you to take them off. But you're breathing in all of that at the same time. And then what do you do with all the extra waste? What do you do with the acid waste after you extract the precious metals? What do you do with the extra waste board that you don't want? So they'll burn it. And again, those are toxic fumes, carcinogenic, and it. So one way or another, the environment gets polluted. And so what we do is we want to deal with it. We're creating the trash here, so we should deal with the trash here. Does that make sense? So we shouldn't export our waste to other countries to use them as our landfill.
Yeah.
We should deal with it here. That's
Yeah,
responsible.
I agree with that. Actually, Veronica sent me a link for e-stewards,
Yes.
like certificate. I read that before, also when I was investigating, researching for this topic, and I saw that you're e-steward certified,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It is also based on the Basel,
The Basel Convention,
Convention.
which governs the transboundary movement of hazardous waste.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
one of my questions was about what happened with the e-waste that is sent to developing countries. But then, what happened when the e-waste cannot be stored in landfills? Where, like, do you recycle? Do you?
Well, shouldn't be. I think I'm a big proponent of that. That it's almost entirely recyclable. We recycle 100% of the e-waste. The plastic is recyclable. The metal is recyclable. The circuit boards are recyclable. All of the components in there can be recycled and recycled responsibly and come back and reused as another product.
Not a product. That is the
Yeah.
best way to do it, like, in order to don't contaminate the environment or people from developing countries, right?
Absolutely.
Well, that's really good. Like,
Yeah, it should all be recycled.